All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Okay. And I see we have a new person who has joined us. Good morning. What do you prefer to be called? Spaniard or
Yes, that's fine.
okay, that's cool. All right, we'll go with that. Okay. So I've got a new official teacher hat that I want to this is if you haven't been out in the Zen world, you haven't seen this probably, but this is the official teacher hat. And I'll get here so you can see what it says. Can you read it? Okay. That was sent to me by a member of the Sangha. I will not name that person other than to say they live in Florida. So there we go. All right. Good morning, everybody. So I think there was some question about whether we were going to do Fusatsu this morning or not. Um, and we're not. Um, we still need to figure that one out a little more. But I am going to talk about one of the precepts, or at least start out there, and we'll see where this goes. And the reason I've selected this particular precept this morning is that it also points up what I see as one of the potential hazards when we start changing the wording of things. As you'll see, this is a precept that's been reworded almost everywhere. Almost, I visited a number of different sites, a number of different sanghas, and they've changed the wording of the precept. And then I want to, um, and so this is the precept. It's sometimes called the precept of not being stingy, and it's sometimes written as a positive precept of being generous. Um, and I'm going to switch here so I can see my other screen. But well, I won't say the original wording of this precept because I have no idea what the original wording was. But at the beginning of my Zen lifetime, however long ago, um, this was the precept was called not sparing the Dharma assets. Not sparing the Dharma assets. And as I say that now, it's sometimes it's the being generous, it's not being stingy, um, uh, and, and that kind of language is where we are with it right now. So, what that does that original meaning? What does that mean? Not sparing the Dharma assets. Well, it certainly does mean generosity. It certainly does mean being sharing and generous. But it has another meaning to it, which is that I'll read this here. The core idea is not to be miserly with the Dharma teachings, readily offering them to others without expecting anything in return. And it emphasizes the preciousness of the Buddha's teachings, treating them as valuable asset that should be shared widely for the benefit of others. And often seen as an ethical precept. Uh, where one pledges to work for the enlightenment of all beings, which includes freely sharing the Dharma. Now, you might reasonably argue that, well, yeah, when we say generosity, we mean all those things. But I think we've lost a lot by losing the specificity, because this is particularly referential to the Dharma, to the teachings of the Buddha. And to making those available to others, to being generous with the Dharma, not sparing those assets. If we are so fortunate in our lives to have encountered this teaching, then as I see that precept, we have a responsibility to help share it with others, to help make it accessible to others. And to bring it to as many people as we can. So two parts here again. It's like, okay, is that not is that not somehow covered under not being generous, under being generous? Sure. But I also think that it benefits from that specificity. And so when we change the language, we lose something. In this case, something fairly important and conspicuous. Um, if we really understand the transformational power of the Buddha's teaching, then encountering it is an incredible gift. In fact, there's a whole thing about the odds of being reborn in a human life. Um, the ancients had a way of expressing that I, um, I won't get it. I won't even attempt to get it right. But it's something like about the same as the odds of one grain of sand on one beach in all of the world ending up in your eye or something like that. And so that so what the point was that having a human life, being born as a human, is an incredible thing in and of itself. Now that's coming, from the ancient Buddhist perspective of rebirth, right? And this idea of sequential and progressive rebirths, and that you probably went through many lives because before you were born as a human, but the tremendous positive aspect of the human life was that you had the opportunity to realize the Dharma, to encounter the Dharma, realize the Dharma. Now, we probably see all that as kind of mythological. Certainly, the whole question of rebirth is up for question. But that said, I don't think that diminishes that statement about the importance. If we have this, we are so fortunate just to have encountered it, to have this opportunity to realize ourselves in this life is huge. But now this is going further. It's saying, and now that you have that, now that we have that, we need to help others encounter it. We need to help others see it. We need to be generous with the Dharma. We can be generous with the teachings of the Buddha. And this, in current times, this may be more important than ever. If part of what we see as essential to the Buddha's teachings are the teachings on loving kindness and compassion, on non-separation, on one body, on the interconnection of all beings and all things. These are so badly needed. So many people are suffering. Many people are suffering, and they're not even aware of it. They're concealing that they're suffering with alcohol and drugs, with internet, with all kinds of other devices to avoid the reality of suffering. And we have this tool. We have this tool that can help us, can liberate us, can lead us to lives that are fulfilling, to having happiness. And that is needed by all humanity more than ever. Certainly always, right? Life is never, or very seldom, a picnic. It's always challenging. It's always difficult. It always has tremendous pain involved. And so this is the medicine for the entire human experience. To help us grow out of our shells, help us grow out into relationship with all being, with the entire universe. Maybe I'm going to stop there for a minute and see kind of what you guys are thinking about that or have reactions.
Well, Peter, when it first comes to my mind, it's there's a distinct difference because in Christianity there's the proselytizing, right? So you're supposed to spread the word of God. And this sounds like that, but I don't think that's what you mean. I think it's more speaking from your heart and applying the wisdom from the cushion to the situation at hand, using the things you've learned, the wisdom and knowledge of the Sangha, and bringing that forward to people in a given moment.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry you feel that way because I had you scheduled to be at the Portland airport giving out flowers this afternoon.
Oh, dang, I would really love that. Can I bring my Newfoundland dog? That would be so cool.
Yes. Well, I mean, your point is, well, this is not sparing. I see it as what we're dispensing, if as it were, is the loving kindness and compassion. That the Dharma can then sort of speak for itself. You know, Buddhism, Zen at least, is not a proselytizing religion. In fact, quite the opposite. You know, if in the, let's say, Tang Dynasty times you had shown up at a monastery and you wanted to practice, you know, the classic thing is they didn't even let you in the gate. You had to sit outside for several days, whatever the weather was, in the rain and the snow, da da da, before they would even let you into the monastery, into the monastery gate. And then if they decided to let you in, it might be 2 years, literally, before you had a chance to have a conversation with the teacher. Um, and mostly you'd be working. They'd have you out in the gardens. They'd have you, you know, chopping wood, carrying water, etc. So, if anything, our history is the opposite. We kind of chased people away. Now, that was based on a certain set of assumptions. Okay, let's back up. The original intention of Zen was enlightenment, right? That's why that was the only reason that you should be practicing, was because you had a strong desire to realize your true nature, to be enlightened beyond anything else in life. And in fact, as we know, you know, those folks were monks and nuns. They weren't householders. They didn't have families. They didn't have jobs. And they, in fact, dedicated their entire lives to the practice of the Dharma. And so it took a very particular kind of person to be willing to do that, to be willing to give up all the things of the world, as it were, and to enter what in those days was extremely rigorous practice. Okay, so a lot has changed since then. Is Zen still about enlightenment? I think that it is. But I think that there are many people now who practice Zen who don't necessarily have the aspiration for enlightenment, but have the aspiration to become better human beings, to become more open human beings, to become more compassionate human beings. And I think there's sort of a third class of people who are practicing not with the expectation of enlightenment, but with the understanding that that may come with their practice over time. So we're not discouraging people any sort of discouraging enough. It's like, you know, sit around and be quiet with a bunch of people and which, you know, we've talked about this. You know, in this age where we have so much dopamine addiction, in which we have so much overstimulation, in which we're so constantly looking at our phones and so on and so forth, I think sitting quiet is getting harder and harder. And it makes it more important than ever. It makes it more important than ever that we break the stream of our addictions to our technological devices, among other things, and be able to live with silence, with stillness. Begin to become familiar with our own selves, our own inner selves. You know, I think as a culture, we're running away from that. We're terrified of what's in there, of ourselves, of silence. I mean, how often do you go into somebody's house where the television is going all day? sometimes all night. They've got something on. They're on the left wing, they've got CNN. If they got on the right wing, they got Fox News, but it's going all the time. Right? There's no silence. And the important silence has no inherent value other than that it gives us that opportunity to connect with ourselves, connect with our inner being, and connect with the world around us in a way that's intimate, in a way that's meaningful. Okay, I kind of got off your question there, Molly, but I hope it answered it someplace.
I'm resonating with Molly. Somehow, the idea of generosity is being so predominant that the precept has morphed into generosity from that of sharing the Dharma, and then going back and realizing that the primary way of holding the sharing of the Dharma is just generosity, um, not proselytizing, not I know and you don't, and I'm going to show you, but just primary generosity. Somehow that seems to be important and beautiful, and helps um helps how you hold um being there for people and the wisdom that we're learning.
Well, perhaps I didn't speak clearly or make myself clear. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be generous. I mean, generosity is one of the core aspects, as far as I'm concerned, of loving kindness and compassion, of living in connection with others, is being generous with all sorts of things. Now, again, our ancestors, you know, this the famous story might have been Hakuin Zenji, but don't quote me on that. Who had a robber enter his cabin at night, and he kind of caught the guy as he was heading out, and he's like, "Wait, you didn't take everything," and he literally packed up all his belongings and gave it to this guy. I'm not suggesting that any of us wants to be that generous, but that's part of the tradition too. But there is interesting because what's coming from there is arising out of not being attached to possessions, right? If we're not being attached to our possessions, at least when we're talking about physical things, then generosity is quite easy. If I haven't assigned the idea of mind to all those things, that's one of the other things that we do, right? We turn things into part of our identity. Part of who we are is defined by our possessions. And therefore, we're going to cling to those tightly. You're taking piece of me. You're taking part of my soul. As opposed to, oh, here's something that you can use. Please take it.
My friend just lost his house in California in the fires. But I don't think I'm going to say, gee, now that you have nothing, you're more Zen-like, you know. It's just one of those things. Your heart goes out and you do want to give stuff to him. But as he said, it's just stuff. And he's got his family and they're all safe and everything. So yeah, the lessons there, maybe the lessons for me, not so much him, but you know what I'm saying?
I do. I think I do. Look, I mean, all of this has sort of pragmatic constraints or limits. Last week I talked about Layman Pong, right? And what did Layman Pong do? He took all his worldly possessions, he threw them into the river, and went off and became a Chan traveler, a wandering. He wasn't a monk because he wasn't ordained, but a wandering practitioner. And then he was joined by his daughter and his wife and son, the whole Pong family. Off they went. Okay. Most of us are not going to do that. And I'm not advocating for that. So that's the other thing, that our understanding of the precepts and the understanding of our traditions and the understanding of our ancestors all has to be balanced within the context of our lives today with practical things. People have responsibilities, they have families, they have partners, they have jobs, they have communities, all of these things that we have responsibilities to. This is part of why, as I see it, Zen is going through constant transformation. If we lived in practice the way our ancestors in the Tang Dynasty did, there would be even less Zen practitioners than there are today. And we'd be completely removed from the world. And I don't think that's a good thing. If this Dharma, this going back to not sparing the Dharma assets, if this Dharma is something that helps us to alleviate our suffering and can help others to alleviate their suffering, then hiding it out in the mountains somewhere really diminishes its potential for doing that help. The biggest thing that any of us could do for Zen is simply to live our lives and be ambassadors for Zen. If you have friends and family and others and they're seeing that you are coping, that you are happy, that you are fulfilled, and so on and so forth, that's a pretty good advertisement for Zen. So just by our practice, just by living in the world, we are making others aware of it.
Uh, Peter, this is interesting because I have only known this precept as not being stingy, and I think my mind immediately goes to more material things rather than my behavior. And, and yet, as you're talking about it, offering the Dharma to others, offering loving kindness, uh, demonstrating connection, uh, that really encompasses everything. So my understanding of this precept is going from, something fairly limited to include everything about the way I live and and being aware that I'm spreading that to the rest of the world. And it would behoove me to do that in a way that is consistent with the Dharma. So it seems to cover everything about our behavior and how we live.
Absolutely. And I think, we're always doing that whether we want to or not, right? Just by living in the world, we are constantly influencing others. We are constantly interacting with others. So we have a choice. We can do that without paying attention, mindless in some sort of mindless way. We can be the pool the pool balls on the table that are just sort of bouncing around and bouncing off the other balls, and it's kind of quasi random sort of thing, and we can go through the world like that, just one ball bouncing off all the others. Or we can be intentional, we can be aware, we can be paying attention to how to my thoughts, my actions all matter. That's the other thing. There's no switch here. There's no like, okay, now this is not important, and then this is important. It's all important. Everything that we do, say, think is important. And when we understand that, excuse me, both the Dharma and quantum physics are pointing in many of the same places. The impacts of our lives, we can't see them, but they're going everywhere. I mean, some of it we can see, but some of it we can't see. So again, we have this. I've had this conversation. Doug's not here this morning, but I've had this conversation with Doug recently about, and maybe with Cal to a certain extent, also about the ways in which Zen sometimes mirrors existentialism. And so we have this existential possibility of creating something that's helpful to others, that's healing to others, that's reaffirming to them, whatever we want to put it. Or we can just be another ball bouncing around out there.
You also talked about overstimulation on the part of everyone, and sitting is hard. And I was thinking, well, how do I demonstrate that? Um, but I had an experience which is too rich for me not to share this morning. And that is that, and it has to do with overstimulation. I planned on doing the Treetop online retreat this weekend. And to do so, I left home and I went over to my son's house, who has a house on Peaks Island. And that way I would be alone and I would be online and I would be able to do the entire retreat. And I got over there and I realized that the internet connection was down and I had no internet connection. So I could not do the online retreat. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll do my own individual retreat. And it was quite enlightening because I had uh, I had no email, so no communications that way. I had no news. My only news was looking out, see the ducks swim by. Uh, One of the biggest surprises for me was how dependent I am at looking at the weather on my phone rather than looking out the window. So the whole time I was there, which was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, almost 3 days, um, I had no idea what weather was coming except for looking out the window and seeing what the weather was. And my news was looking out the window and seeing the ducks, and there was no music, there was just silence. Um, and it was such a um, e- demonstration of how our connection to the internet removes us from the actual thing that's going on in our lives, even the weather, even checking the weather. We're removed from, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, yeah. And then the vacuum cleaner got clogged, and I thought, oh, I'll just go and here's the model number. It was a new one. I'll just go look it up and see what might be the problem. I'll troubleshoot. I thought, oh, no, I can't. So I just have to look at it myself and figure it out. Um, and I think how that translates. So, how do I spread that to the world without proselytizing? You should do away with your internet. But I think maybe what it does is make me more attentive to others, which I think is something that's can be lacking for people also. And the experience that I had enables me, I think, to be more attentive to what's in front of me because I'm not distracted. And so if I can be more attentive to people, then that's generosity of the Dharma, I think. So thanks for the opportunity to tell my story.
Thank you for sharing. You know, our presence is a powerful thing. Giving our presence, giving our attention, giving our awareness to another person is no insignificant thing, right? As Rob can attend, people pay therapists to do that. He's nodding his head. Yeah, you know, and that's a little bit of how crazy our society is, because not to diminish his or any other therapist's skill, but I think people used to get that in their own lives, in their own families, in their own communities, you know, and now we've got to sort of get it in a synthetic place. Uh, we've kind of lost many of the natural avenues of connectedness that we had to one another. So if you really want somebody to listen, you got to pay a therapist. You know, and I don't know, that's not a bad thing. It's certainly Rob his right. He likes the income. What can I say? but, but yeah, you know, but you know, it's interesting because I have so many Amish neighbors here in town, and I see their lives, and I'm jealous. If you know, I mean, they're Christians, and I'm not a Christian, so it just not an option for me. But it's admirable in so many ways. They are living without all the technology. Now, when it's 10 degrees out and the wind is blowing, driving into town in your horse and buggy, not so much fun. But so some of the technology is pretty nice. But you know, they don't have cell phones. They don't have any of that. You know, it's quiet in their homes. A little envious of that. Buddy. Okay.
Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely Sunday.
Thank you.